Okay, we're gonna get started. Hello, my name is Dr. Jade Burns, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Michigan School of Nursing. My research broadly uses technology, for example, social media, mobile apps, messaging, and virtual spaces like these to increase access to healthcare and sexual health services for adolescents and young adults, more specifically, youth of color and young Black males. I've worked in the city of Detroit for over 15 years serving youth in multiple capacities, community, academic, clinical, and more. Tonight, we have an incredible virtual presentation for you. It's called Young Men's Health Matters, a dialogue on health, wellness, success, and more. The focus of the Young Black Men's Health Matters webinar is to address the critical gaps in the perceptions of Black men's health and healthcare, especially for young Black males. We're looking at ages 18 to 30 years old tonight. Last summer, we received grant monies to create a community academic partnership between Detroit Community Health Connection and the University of Michigan School of Nursing that would promote health and preventative care among a specialized population. We formed a community advisory board to explore some of the most pressing issues that young men face in Detroit. Well, it turns out that the information we found impacted men at all levels. So earlier this month, we organized a successful health summit with over 300 men registered. So we decided to host another event. But this time, again, targeting younger Black males, including millennials and those in the Gen Z population. With COVID-19 still prevalent in the community and the current fight for civil rights, it is important now than ever to talk about some of these issues that are going on. We hope to create a unifying experience so that young men are educated and have the resources to move forward in their lives, specifically in urban areas such as Detroit. I would like to thank the University of Michigan School of Nursing, Detroit Community Health Connection, and President and CEO Wayne Bradley and the executive leadership there and the board members. I would also like to thank the Curtis Center at the University of Michigan School of Social Work led by Daphne Watkins and the DRB Lab. Today, we'll address the following topics: mental health, community activism, health and fitness, business, overall health issues such as risk behaviors, general health, COVID-19, and education. That's a lot, but we'll hear from the experts in their respective fields and more. At the end of this presentation, we ask that you please complete our brief survey to further explore these topics. This info will also be in the chat box. We will get started, and I will now introduce the moderator, Javante, who is in New York. He's from the area, from Detroit. I would like to thank Teen Hype for recommending him. He is a Teen Hype alumni, and so I know that he is already changing the world. So thank you. Javante, if you would come on, please.
Hello, how's it going?
Thank you for coming.
No problem. So, as Dr. Jade Burns was just mentioning, I'll be a moderator for tonight. I'm Javante, and yeah, you guys are gonna hear a lot of my voice. She mentioned that I was a Teen Hype alumni. I was born and raised in Detroit. Right now, I'm out in New York City. I'm working right now as a trainer, and I recently started my own business. So I opened a vegan restaurant, and yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. So I'm more than happy to kind of serve as a resource to anyone, and I guess kind of anyone who has questions about anything related to education, and anything as it relates to what it means to kind of go into business, what it means to be an entrepreneur, and then what it means to be fit and kind of try to eat healthy. So. Yeah, I'm going to be a moderator, and yeah, I'm here for whatever you guys need. So we have an incredible panel of young Black men tonight that include Dr. Anthony Adetomiwa, Jay Reed, Dr. Jason Branch, and James Murray. Also Devin Gardner. You guys are going to get to know them very well. Each speaker will be given about 5 minutes to introduce themselves and their work. And you guys will also, the Q&A box is going to be open for questions from attendees. So feel free to submit any questions from the Q&A box. We want this to be as comfortable as we can, try to have an open discussion. But in the event that there aren't any questions, we'll have some questions to kind of prompt our conversation, okay? So without further ado, our panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Anthony Adetomiwa, and I am a Black male who was born in Nigeria, raised up in Houston, Texas, came to this beautiful city to learn everything that you guys have to offer, and also to be able to give everything that I have to offer to this great city of Detroit. I am currently a pediatrician working through Authority Health, as well as with affiliations to DCHC, Detroit Community Health Connection. And it's always been my dream, my goal, my ambition to be able to give back to the youth of color. We have so much to offer. We have so much potential. And my goal is to be able to give back and educate and just do the best that I can to try to raise young kings and queens in this community to the best of my God-given abilities.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jay Reed. I am a hip hop artist and community activist from the city of Inkster, Michigan, right outside of the beautiful city of Detroit. I recently relocated from Detroit to Los Angeles, California, where my wife and I currently reside. I am honored to be on this call because I have a strong passion, not only for young Black males, but a lot of the plights that they face, especially since I was one of those young Black men, just trying to figure it all out. So I'm honored to be on this call, sharing this platform with other like-minded individuals, and just look forward to kind of being an extra resource for anybody who may be listening.
My name is James Murray. I'm from the city of Detroit, born and raised. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University, currently finishing up my thesis at Jackson State University. I'm a public administrator for the city of Detroit. I'm not here in that capacity. I'm also a community activist, and I have a nonprofit called The Nation. I'm the vice president, and my work focuses on the intersection where policy actually meets people. We mentor young men from middle school and high school through college, and our values are live, learn, teach. So I'm here to be a resource to help as many young folks as I can while we take this journey together.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jason Branch. I am a professor at Monmouth University in New Jersey, originally from Dayton, Ohio. Spent the past 18 years in Alabama before relocating to New Jersey. I'm a licensed professional counselor in private practice, and my practice is completely virtual. I'm able to see clients in 4 states: Alabama, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Being from Ohio, being from Dayton is very similar to Detroit, being a young Black male and being able to overcome a lot of challenges and obstacles to get to where I am now. So my interest is helping Black people, especially Black men, when it comes to counseling and mental health services. So I'm dedicating my life and my career to helping men of color, especially Black men, with counseling and mental health. Glad to be on this show. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to having this honest and courageous conversation.
How you doing, everybody? Devin Gardner here, former quarterback at the University of Michigan. Started my own business, helping young people, people of color, people of all races, and kind of integrating them so they get a chance to learn a lot about a lot of different cultures and experience different things that they probably wouldn't experience otherwise. And I kind of use football as that tool to continue to push it forward and continue to get guys to develop their mental fortitude, mental toughness, and I'm excited to be on this panel as well, and can't wait to hear everybody's opinions and views and answer some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists, for the introductions. So as we kind of said a little earlier, feel free as we kind of get into some of this content and hear what some of these amazing men have to say. Feel free to use that Q&A box. Feel free to access as many questions as you can kind of think of. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into some questions. So what kind of mental health programs exist in urban communities?
So there are several programs that's out, depends on your city, depends on your state. One of the biggest things is to research, find out what's available. One of the easiest methods is Psychology Today, www.psychologytoday.com. There's a list of providers, organizations, groups that's available to provide mental health services. And with these services, there also are some nonprofits that's available to provide mental health services at no charge or very low charge. So a lot of times people think about counseling mental health, it costs too much, I don't want to be involved, I can't afford it. And there's a lot of resources that's out there where you actually can afford to go to counseling if you are doing the research to find out what's available. So Psychology Today is one of those first places that I highly recommend checking out. Also, Therapy for Black Men. It's a huge resource that provides mental health services specifically for Black men. And it gives you resources all across the country to assist with mental health services. So the services are available, but if I don't know about them, then they don't exist. And my challenge to all of you is to find out what's around you, find out what's available, to get involved, to get help, get the services that you need.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Branch. How do we feel about music in the community, and how does music help the community?
I can chime in on this one. Just coming from my personal experience of being an artist, I've always, since a child, used music as an outlet. I think the same way Devin mentioned being an athlete, right? We face a lot of barriers, especially as young Black men. And I don't think we have a system, a lot of systems in place that give us an opportunity to express ourselves, especially emotionally. And you listen to a lot of music, yeah, it got a lot of bad notations, right? But a lot of people overlook the fact that people are telling their stories, right? So it's a lot of pain inside of music that's being expressed. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed, right? You got a lot of these artists that, music is not just something they jump on and kind of, say whatever they want on a beat. Of course, we got some artists that do, but honestly, for those who typically are utilizing music for what it should be and what it is, it's an outlet. And again, that's what I've always used it for. And, when I don't have an opportunity to talk with somebody in an isolated forum, and when I can't call a friend or I feel people won't understand, right, then I can just always jot down my thoughts and my ideas. And I love music because even it's times where I have so much music that's unreleased, but I personally feel better just by getting it out on paper. So music has always been therapeutic for me.
Awesome. So you're saying that music, I guess, kind of has a lot to do with self-expression and how that benefits the community. How do you think that actually contributes to the well-being of young men?
Well, you know what, again, I think it goes back to just giving them an opportunity to express themselves. I did a lot of work with a literacy nonprofit, and I got an opportunity to work with a lot of young men and women, African-American predominantly, who struggled to read, right? And so when you think about struggling to read, that's a barrier. And a lot of times they don't realize, okay, they know that I'm struggling with something and it's frustrating. And because of that, they act out. A lot of kids, you can see a correlation between kids who are struggling to read and kids who have bad behavior in school because they act out because they got this barrier. And so what I realized, I utilized the fact that I was an artist to give them an opportunity to make learning fun, right? You get to write raps, make some words rhyme, but ultimately you're still expressing yourself. You're able to write, right? It's just like a teacher being creative. And it's not an idea that I created. It's just me knowing that as an artist that I deal with a lot of struggles and knowing that, hey, I'm going to take these struggles out in my marriage. I'm going to take them out in my friendships. I'm going to take them out with strangers if I don't find a way to get them expressed, like Dr. Branch said, through therapy, right? So how can I do that? How can I create my own therapy? And I think if I could just make that correlation, I think that's what music is for young men. And I think what also happens is sometimes it gets in the way. Sometimes you get artists that want fame, right, and notoriety, and then that becomes stress, right? But they're doing it wrong. That should be an added bonus. Music should be therapy. Music should be an outlet. It should be a platform for you to tell your story and get some of those emotional stresses off of your mind.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, especially artists like Jay Reed and others like him, like J. Cole. I think a lot of people, both older, younger, no matter what the age, when they're going through things, they feel unique, right? They feel like they're unique and they're the only ones going through it, right? And I think that listening to music, especially the way Jay Reed presents his music, and like I said, J. Cole is my favorite rapper, it lets you know that you're not alone, right? There's other people dealing with the same types of things that you're dealing with. And it can almost be therapy without ever having to pay the money to go to therapy, if you will. And I think that music can save a lot of lives. And not to say that it saved my life, but it's got me through some tough times. And you know, when you're starting to feel selfish and feel unique and feel like you're the only one going through something, you listen to a great song or a song by Jay Reed. You know, he's always got some nice hits coming out. It changes your perspective, right? It gives you a fresh look, and it makes you realize, okay, I'm not the only one going through it, and people have gone through this and come out on the other side. So if they can, why can't I?
We just got a question in our Q&A. So, James?
Yes. So the question says, with all the funding cuts to urban school districts, what are some of the programs in the metropolitan area offer hands-on engagement programs for our Black youth? So one of my favorite programs, I have to put the shameless plug out there, is Midnight Golf. I'm a Midnight Golf alumni. Midnight Golf paved the way for me, and it taught me what right was, definitely. And then, of course, I have to go on my own nonprofit, which is The Nation. We mentor young men through middle school and high school, all the way through completion of college. And most of our young men are now in grad school and high school. And I also want to put out there Team Height. That is another program. I had a lot of friends in those programs that I necessarily wasn't. And those are some of the programs that I know about.
Awesome. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think Detroit PAL is doing a great job of, and I'm an alumni of Detroit PAL growing up. And for me, I've talked with the new CEO, Robert Jameson, who I've known for a very long time. He played for the same high school coach as me. Before he got I want to say in power, but before he became the CEO, for many, many years, has been just, football, basketball, the sports, right? And you're not really enriching families and students outside of being an athlete. And that's one thing that he's really done a great job of trying to transform in the whole Detroit PAL, to just reach more kids, not just that, but to reach them on a higher level than just as athletes and as kids. Because it's a reality, right? You work for something your entire life, but you don't always get what you think you deserve. And so these kids, many more of them will not reach their ultimate goal of playing professionally than, the ones that will, right? And so I think that he's doing a great job of not only enriching the kids, but helping the families, right? Creating programs to help parents, right? Whether it's financially or just in a mental health aspect, because parents deal with a lot of stress that they may sometimes pass on to their kids, right? And now the kid who's already dealing with kid stress, right? And we kind of look at it like, oh, you don't have anything to worry about. Kids have stress as well. And for them, it's big. Now you're taking on other stress, like with your parents, and maybe if you're not financially stable and things like that. And so that can cause a lot of kids to act out just the same as, the inability to perform academically.
Just to chime in just a bit on that as well, to kind of backtrack and answer the question. One of these programs out here, I believe the Detroit Boxing Youth Company, it's so prime. I had the blessing to be able to go out there briefly and spend a couple of days with them and help tutor some of the kids, and also see what they're able to do with the youth. Just like that, Devin was mentioning earlier, you have so much pent-up aggression, whether it's through school, whether it's one disappointment or another, anxiety about something, fears, whatever it is that our kids, our young men, our young women are facing with, they internalize that. And they oftentimes carry that, and they continue to, it continues to affect their mind, their mental space, their ability to function in the classroom, so on and so forth. And at times that can build up pent-up aggression. So the ability to be able to go to a boxing gym and, punch a couple punching bags and, continue to exercise and, take out all of that energy into another source. But then even besides that, to also have an opportunity or an avenue for people to help students with their homework, for which is what they do. They're not only just a boxing gym, but they're also a place like for tutoring, for SATs, for college preparation, for middle school, high school. They have so many different ways to help our kids. So I feel like that combination has been beautiful to see. And I think that's one of the things that we have in our community that are able to help, even if we have tax cuts and breakdowns of the school systems.
And one thing I noticed that worked for me and my organization and the school districts I work with is I program with the children. I don't necessarily program for the children. You get a focus group going. Just because you have a program that works in one area, it might not work in all areas. All young men don't like the same things. Like at my high school, Davis Aerospace, we transitioned from teaching children high school kids how to fly airplanes to how to fly drones. And it's free. And some kids like that, but we realized we had to offer culinary arts. We had to offer coding, computer coding. We had to offer find ways to get them involved in carpentry, because you can't just have one curriculum for every student.
Thank you. Dr. Adetomiwa, question. What can we learn about health disparities as it relates to COVID-19?
So just to give like a general understanding of health disparities in general. So when you look at the Black population versus other ethnic groups, you realize that there's a huge imbalance when it comes to certain health problems that we may have, whether that's heart disease, diabetes, at times certain types of cancers. For some odd reason, we just have the brunt of the bunch, and it affects us greatly. So that being said, when you kind of already have that background and you already kind of have that shortcoming, when you have an infection such as COVID-19 that affects people more if they have more of these diseases, such as our elderly population, such as people who might be in the 40s, but they might be inactive, obese, they might have some heart issues already, some diabetes. You can get diabetes from the age of the youth, of 10 years old, 8 years old. So when you have so many things compounding the issue, it makes it worse. And that's why we start seeing such a disproportion of our Black families being killed. When you look at Louisiana, they have a great majority of Black people in their communities. I think about roughly 30 to 40%, but yet a majority of people who died, 70% of the people who died from COVID were Black. Same thing similarly in Detroit, whether it's like, I think 13-20% or so Black people that are in Detroit, yet we have a good chunk, 30-40% of the people who died were Black. And when you compare that to other ethnicities, we're unfortunately beating them to the punch. So COVID-19 really has kind of just, put a spotlight on how badly things are. And if we're not careful, we can easily just overlook it and just say, well, Black people don't take care of themselves. Black people may eat a lot of fried food. Black people don't, they eat hot Cheetos. A lot of my kids, they love hot Takis. They love Cheetos. I mean, I do too. I'm not even gonna lie to you. They're good. But that being notwithstanding, a lot of times in the inner cities, that's really all they can afford. So when you start having, these multiple failures in the system, it compounds and it adds up. So whenever something arises and there's a disease or there's a new virus, of course, we're going to be hit the heaviest because we already have so many things stacked up against us, just speaking on a purely health level. But yes, so COVID-19 definitely has, unfortunately, showed the ugly side when it comes to our people and our health, and hopefully people can see that and hopefully, be more of an advocate for change, whether it be with the food that we eat, having more access to grocery stores, having more access to gyms, having more access to the things that a lot of our white counterparts, Asian counterparts have access to. But yes.
Dr. Adetomiwa, I know you were just kind of mentioning and talking a little bit about the diet. And not even just related to the diet, how do we get, young Black men to care about their health in general?
I feel like you have to kind of, it's just like when you were talking to like a child, right? Oftentimes they may not see reason with what you're saying, but you have to kind of tailor your message to hit home. So whether that's tailoring the message of eating well in regards to longevity, in regards to, we love family, right? We want to be able to see our grandkids. We want to be able to see our great grandkids. So hitting that at an earlier age is something that we can kind of use to help, kickstart the ideas of wanting to stay healthy, wanting to eat right, wanting to more or less live your best life as long as you can.
Gotcha. On the topic of health, I do have a question for Devin. How are sports related to overall health among young men? And how beneficial are sports among young men in urban communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. The obvious view on that is the physical health, right? You get a lot of exercise, right? You're in the sun, whatever, all those things. But I don't think people understand or give enough credit to what football does for the mind of young men. And this is not like a hearsay thing I'm saying. I'm telling you this from experience. Football saved my life, right? There's no way I'd be on this panel talking to you, talking to everyone, and with this great group of men without football. And when you grow up in Detroit, and a lot of you have, and there are so many opportunities for you to do the wrong thing. The main reason why, accompanied with my mom, but she has 5 children, right? It's hard for her to keep an eye on one of her children at all times. And there were a number of opportunities growing up in the projects to really go left, right? Left being the wrong way. And I couldn't, right? Because I had a love for something that I was doing in football. And at that point, it was on a surface level of just, I love sport, right? I love playing sports, and that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna make choices in my life based off of me being able to play sports, right? And so, but as I continue to get older, I start to see the mental health of football and how developing the mental fortitude to deal with criticism, take coaching, which you have to learn, right? Being on time for things, kind of like in the military, things like that. Making sure that you're accountable for others, right? Because as much as everybody wants to say we're self-made and we did it on our own, you always need a helping hand along the way, and you always need to learn to work with others. And I feel like football, and obviously I'm biased, right? Because it's my sport and I love it, but I think football is the greatest teacher of life and the greatest parallel for life, just because, and Jay Reed can attest to this, because he's a football player as well. When you're playing football, and it could be throughout a career, it could be throughout one single game or practice. You can throw a game-winning touchdown or catch a game-winning touchdown, and in that same game, you can be the butt of all jokes because you've dropped the game-winning touchdown, and you have to deal with those emotions right within yourself. And then the higher you go, the more important that the sport becomes to other people, right? Betting and all these different things. And so now you have all these different pressures, similar to the pressures you deal with life when you have children, right? And you're looking at your children's face and you do not have the resources to help them. How are you going to respond, right? What are you going to do to combat that? And I think that football is, there are so many highs, so many lows, so many peaks and valleys. And it's done a great job. It's done a really great job for me. And I've had great people in my life, great coaches. Jay Reed and I share the same coach, Coach Greg Carter. Going, and one time as a sophomore in high school, football was taken away from me, right? So in the beginning of the year, for the first 5 games, I was suspended and wasn't able to play, right? Just because I wasn't performing well academically nor socially. And that broke my heart, right? And that caused me to change my entire outlook on life, treating others differently, right? Treating others the way I need to be treated, getting a humbleness about myself and things like that. Still very confident, but humbling myself to the fact that this could be gone at any moment. And this was, at this point, it was gone on not even injured. And then fast forward to as a professional, in my first professional game, never been, seriously injured, your knee's blown out, right? And at that point, that's when the stress comes. That's when the anxiety, that's when what is next, right? What have I done to look at myself and know who I am outside of a football player? And I think that's where a lot of coaches and a lot of football organizations miss the mark, right? Not helping these young men to understand that this football is a tool, right? And you can change your life with it, but it doesn't have to be with $1 million a contract with a professional football team. And I think that because I took it serious, because I wanted to find out who I was outside of a football player, because I had a heart for helping others, and I had some good people. Denard Robinson was my roommate who I was competing with to be the quarterback, and he was one of my best friends, which I had no idea. He's insane because I wanted his job so desperately, and he continued to help me. You know what I mean? But those type of lessons that you learn, it's hard to learn if you don't compete in sport, right? Competing with someone fiercely, but still working together as a team.
Awesome.
Javante, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
So I just want to ask Devin a follow-up question to that, because that was very well said. I guess my question or my concern would be, how do you feel like we can tailor like the prospects or the hopes and aspirations of being, or, you know, going to the NFL versus, you know, using, like you said, using like everything that you learn on the field, the hard work, the work ethic, you know, to be able to kind of channel that into other realms. Because I feel like one thing that kind of hurts us too is because we see so many people who are success stories, they made it, you know, especially with our youth, you know, they're like, all right, you know, I want to be the next MJ, right? You know, I want to be the next LeBron, right? So they kind of tailor their hopes and dreams to that alone. So how do you feel like we can kind of tailor or adjust their expectations where they can learn whatever they can from these sports and kind of take it to the next level?
That's a great question. And so for my group, young go-getters, right, we train all races, religions, female, male, whatever, right? I start off by explaining to every single one of them, right? You're expected to give everything you got, right? And you're expected to dream so high, right? Like me, for example, I was just talking on State Champs earlier today, and we were kind of reminiscing about my high school career and all the goals that I had. And I wrote on a piece of paper, I want to be the #1 quarterback in the country, right? Which seems ridiculous, right? That's a ridiculous thing to think of as a sophomore or freshman in high school, to say, hey, I'm going to be the best quarterback in the country as far as other people are concerned unanimously, right? And I want to, you know, be an All-American, which once again, vastly things that just doesn't happen for people. And I was able to achieve those things because I was diligent and everything. But what I explained to all of them, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much time you put in, it still may not work out, right? You still may not get what you want. And going in, you have to understand that I may give everything I want, and I write my goals down, everything, and I want you to have the highest goals, but you still may not get them. And so what are you going to do after that disappointment, right? And I challenged them to always, my favorite teacher, he's deceased now, and I actually spoke at his funeral in college. And he always used to say, think about what you think about, right? And I didn't quite understand it, right? I was like, think about what you think. What do you mean, think about what you think about? You cannot allow doubt to creep in, because now you're failing from the start, right? And you need to continue to gear your thoughts toward being successful. And it doesn't have to be just in football, but I want you to give everything you got to go get that. If that's what you want, you give everything you have to go get it. But along the way, find out who you are outside of a football player, so that if football is what you love, you can use that in a different avenue to help others and create a life for yourself similar to the way that I've done.
So, you know, I've really never told this story publicly. So once upon a time, I played PAL football for a whole, I want to say half of a summer. And then I got cut by my own cousin. And then afterwards, I found out why he cut me. He told me, he was like, you have the option to do other things. Like, you're in DAPSAP, you know how to golf, you know how to play tennis, you know how to play basketball. He said, some of these other brothers, this is their only opportunity. Don't be selfish. And then I didn't get it. And then as I realized once I got older, I said, this is some folks' only plan. This was a hobby that I wasn't even good at. You know, so we have to find a way to channel our young people and transition them into different spaces and places where they're comfortable, because I hated math, going into grad school. And then one of my African American professors at my HBCU, the Jackson State University, he sat me down in his office one day for like 4 hours, and we talked about all the things I was anxious about. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense. Like my teachers just weren't teaching in the way that I could receive things. And it like changed my whole life. And now I specialize in numbers.
I think that's very important because a lot of educators, a lot of coaches, they think it's one way, right? And every kid, every adult, all of us, we all learn and understand things differently. And I think, like you said, you were cast aside because it's like, oh, you have other things, and maybe you just weren't good enough to him. But you never know. You could have been very good if he found a different way to get through to you, right? Using other avenues during the sport. And so, I mean, I think that that's very true, that you just need to find, well, we as educators and helpers of young people, but the educators that are employed in our schools and the coaches that are coaching our young people, we need to continue to find different ways. And I think it's a lot of just being lazy, right? Because you know a way, and it's like, all right, man, if you're not getting it this way, then we're gonna move on from you, right? But I think you just need to leave no stone unturned and continue to find ways to coach and continue to find ways to teach so that almost everybody gets it. Now, there are some kids that are just like, all right, I'm not getting it, okay, right? But for the most part, every kid wants to learn, wants to be good at something, has dreams and aspirations. And I think we need to work harder as leaders to find those dreams and aspirations and bring those dreams out that they may not even know about.
I like exactly how you ended that, because that actually leads me into what I wanted to ask the panel next. As we kind of think about like dreams and aspirations, especially for young Black men, how do we feel about what it is that's going on today as it relates to the current events, as it relates to George Floyd, as it relates to Breonna Taylor? How does that impact our dreams? How does that impact the decision making, the willingness to want to do, or shoot for the stars?
So,
Rock, paper, scissors.
okay. So I currently, in my current capacity, I'm angry, I'm upset, and I protest, I march, I walk in solidarity, but it's how I channel it, and I use policy as my tool and my vehicle and my mechanism, and we all have to be stewards of information in this time and know what the ins and outs of a policy, a law, or ordinance is. So when somebody come to you with things that aren't facts, like I'm immediately like I just research all day, research, and what's going on? It's unjust, and I don't understand how we stood silent so long. My grandmother was a Black Panther. My mother was a Black Panther, and so the way I see things now, and I see police injustice, and it's crazy. Like I don't understand how we have survived so long in this space, and our bodies have, and our minds have responded and conformed. Because at no point we should be in an all-Black city and still face some of the situations that we face, even in terms of police brutality, socioeconomic injustice, and things like that. I think we have to be more vocal, but I'm tired of hearing people talk about stuff. It's all about that action. What are we going to do? Because we've talked enough. Martin was talking, Malcolm was talking. Somebody was singing a song the other day, "We shall overcome someday." And I had to tell them at the protest, it's today. Like I can't wait someday. Like we're gonna do this now. We're gonna get it done, and we're gonna be the young people that do it.
So what do we tell them? What do we tell young Black men who are feeling discouraged? Dr. Jason, I haven't heard from you in a while.
Okay, I think it's very important, never forget, what are we here for? A lot of us has goals and dreams, and even with the current state of our country right now, that doesn't stop the goals and dreams. And if you notice, this isn't anything new. This isn't anything different as far as us as Black men dealing with this stuff. It's been going on since the beginning of time, especially for Black men. So this is another wave. And this wave, there's going to be a lot of things happening now because the wave that's hitting now has never hit before, but this is a wave. So to me, understanding those goals and dreams and being able to focus towards those goals and dreams by putting yourself first. And to me, when it comes to the protests and the things that's going on, you have to find what works best for you. And that's for youth, that's for fathers, that's for anybody. Find what's best for you. If you feel as though, hey, I'm all about this protest. If you want to go down to DC and protest, go for it. If you feel as though I want to speak about it on social media or I want to be on panels like this, find your lane, find what works for you, and speak out, speak up of what works for you. I think it's an individual process, and collectively, if everybody's doing what they want to do, what works for them, you're going to find other people who have the same medium. So if you think about this protest, there's a few people who have the same passion about protests, and they're out in the streets. And then you have other people who are protesting via social media or within group settings or with here, like what we're doing. All these Black men on this panel right now talking about speaking our truth and speaking our lived experiences. This is us using our abilities to help other people. So when you think about dreams and goals, we are all living our goals and dreams. That's on this panel, we wouldn't be here. And in order for us to do that, we had to persevere through a lot of different things. And it's harder, especially for Black men, in my opinion, than it is for others, because we deal with things that no one else has to deal with just because of the way we look. So that's our reality, which makes us resilient, which makes us work harder and push beyond the limits to get the things that we want done. To me, that question, this topic alone is another panel that we can have for the whole weekend, because it's so much, it's so enriched, but it doesn't stop what we came here to do. And to me, regardless of what's going on with the protests, what's going on in this society, we still have a responsibility to make sure we're taken care of as well as taking care of everybody else.
If I may, I just wanted to add to that by saying, there's a video that I watched, and I'm pretty sure everybody has seen it at this time, where it was pretty much like 3 different generations of men, where one was a little bit on the older side, and he was of the impression to kind of just burn everything down. And then there's another male who was probably in his 30s or so, who was talking to one of the young men that he brought, I guess. And at that time, he was trying to more or less reiterate, you know, we've been through this. We're going through this. We've been struggling this fight. We've been fighting this fight, and you see where we are today. Whereas, you know, he was trying to tell him, your job right now is to find another path, find a better way, find a more successful way. And thank God, I mean, I feel like, you know, things are definitely starting to shape, and I'm glad that we're making progress, but there's still so much more that needs to be done. And I feel like we can take an example out of that, you know, out of that scenario, and just go forth. And whenever we're talking to our youth, our cousins, our family, friends, just be transparently blunt, transparently honest with them. When you speak your truth and when you speak your life story, whether through testimony or whatever it is, sharing back and being brutally honest with the youth, that's huge. We're living a society today where a lot of people have had, you know, like a mass exodus from the church, because they feel like we're kind of stepping away from the truth. We're not being as honest. Everything's just, you know, a curtain. And people nowadays, you know, to excuse my, you know, lack of better knowledge, lack of better terms, but people are tired of the BS. People are tired of the stories, the fakeness. So they need the truth. When you talk to the youth, when you reach back, you know, that's able to help them know that they're not in it alone. They haven't faced it alone. And then also encouraging them, not just only telling them, hey, this is how life is. Hey, you know, if you get stopped by the police, do this, da 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 da. There's so many things we can do to try to arm them. But so many times I feel like we're on the defense. We've been raised, we've been taught, protect yourself, try to stay alive, come back home. But we need to start giving back to the youth in a way that is also offensive. Don't set limits for yourself. Reach for the skies. Be anything that you want to be. Go out there and advocate. You know, form groups, form alliances. You know, build up businesses. When you go to college, don't just go to college with a one-track mind, but literally try to learn everything that you can. You can learn economics. You can learn from businesses. You can learn architecture. There's no limits to what you can learn. And those experiences and those interactions with different people, different populations, that's how you can get your brain functioning to be able to start thinking about better solutions, better things to do. So just to tie back to that example, he was telling him, you know, you have to find a better way, because what we've been doing and what we are doing is not enough, and is not where it's going to get us to where we're supposed to be.
Dr. Adetomiwa, I have a couple questions from you from our chat box, or Q&A box rather. The first one reads, as an educator, how can I assist a student who is diagnosed with ADD or ADHD in my class? What are some of the strategies? What are some of the strategies that you can employ?
For me, working with young kids, I feel like every kid has a form of ADD, right? And I think a lot of people, we're diagnosing these kids and it's like it's a problem. I think that they're kids and they want to do what they want to do, right? I don't think that it's a real, I mean, sure every one of us have a form of ADD, right? You know, but when there's something that we need to do and we want to do, we focus on it and we go get it, right? And I think that that's something that you need to relate to the kids, and you cannot be lazy. You have to stay on them every second of every day. And it's tiring. It's tiring at times because the levels are different, right? Because younger kids or kids, if there's something that a kid doesn't want to do, that ADD will come up and it will spike and it will show you an entirely different side of the kid. But when you start to pique a kid's interest, that's when they learn to focus. That's when they pay attention to detail. And that's when they start, that ADD starts to go out of the window. And now when they get older, like me, they can focus on what they want to focus on. And then they can develop the ADD when they don't really want to focus on something.
In addition to that, I think it's important for us to know that a lot of kids, especially Black kids, are misdiagnosed or overdiagnosed, over-medicated and overdiagnosed. And ADHD is one of the labels that a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists may put on children because they don't know. And some of these psychologists and psychiatrists are not people of color. They're not Black. So they look at, you know, hyperactivity or, you know, excessive energy as, oh, that's ADHD. They don't even get the chance to know the student. They don't get a chance to know the family, the parents, and that's the easy way out. So a lot of our youth are misdiagnosed. A lot of them are overdiagnosed. So to me, as an educator, it's important for us to educate our youth as well. What is ADD? What is ADHD? Because some of our students and families have been told what it is, and now they use that label to their disadvantage. As in, I can't do A, B, and C because I got ADD, ADHD. It's easy to say that, but the truth is, you may not even have it. As Mr. Gardner just said, that student may not even have it, may not even need that diagnosis, but now we're labeled. I can use that diagnosis as an excuse from now until.
Crutch.
Yeah, I can use it as a crutch. And that happens to a lot of our youth, especially youth of color. And it's the discrepancy within systematic racism. You know, that's a whole other conversation we can dive into as well. But when we're dealing with mental health, there's not a lot of people that look like me that's in this profession. So therefore, I don't know how to deal or manage with kids that don't look like me. So I'm going to do what I feel as though my training allows me to do and slap a label. And it's unfair and it's unfortunate. It continues to happen. So, you know, sometimes the deck is stacked against us as educators. How do I deal? How do I manage? And to me, I think it's important for you to do the best you can with what you have and knowing that's more than enough.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that, like being the only person that looks like you, well, not the only, but one of the few people that look like you in your profession. I went to graduate school for social work, right? And so I had, I had the internship and all these different things. And so just a quick story on the ADD track. I'm in my internship, right? And it's a kid, right? He's almost like mute, right? No personality, right? But his brother's a little off the chain, right? He has a brother that's, whatever. And so I'm talking to the people that work there. I'm like, well, what's the deal with these two? Well, the one kid just take his medicine, right? And he's lively and whatever, and the other kid does, right? And so I'm like, wow, taking medicine and all these different things. I've learned about it, but hadn't really gotten a chance to experience it. And then one day the kid doesn't take his medicine, right? And when I tell you off the chain, just completely off the rails, and I see it and it's like, okay, he's being diagnosed because somebody could not handle it. They've never seen someone act like this. And so instantly they don't go to, maybe he's super creative and he's not being challenged enough. Maybe he's much smarter than you, right? And he's bored and he can't, they go straight to, hey, we need to put him on medicine. And now it takes away his creativity. It takes away his personality. And now, not only that, he feels himself, but he can't react, right? He feels himself being dumbed down and almost watered down. And so now he builds resentment, right? He builds resentment for the people who diagnosed him. He builds resentment for the people in power, right? He doesn't want to respect authority. He builds resentment for his own parents that agreed to it. And so now you've created an entirely different monster. And this could have been one of the greatest, minds of our time, right? But you will never know because, like you said, there aren't a bunch of people that look like us diagnosing kids and social workers going into schools and going to different places. to help these kids, right? And when a kid is getting out of control, i.e. me when I was a kid, I was uncontrollable if you didn't know how to do it, right? I was out of control, you know what I mean? And it's very, very disheartening. Like I was heartbroken because I saw so much of me in that kid, and his personality has been watered down, and he's gonna have a future where he's gonna use that crutch of always, man, I just can't. I need my medicine, or I can't focus. I have this, I have that. And it's unfair. It's very unfair because he doesn't have a choice, right? He doesn't have a choice. And it's heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see when I was about 22, 21 years old. And at 28 years old, it's even more heartbreaking right now, especially with what's going on with cops killing guys, and not knowing that same kid might have been the kid that could have been a genius, but it was stripped away from him.
Thank you.
So having a person with ADHD and going through the spectrum, I was diagnosed by a teacher. And it wasn't until I got to middle school till I had a black teacher who actually, like, he was a black man. He actually engaged me. He was like, "We not doing this." Like, you know, he's like 100% is not an A in my class. He's like 125% is an A. And then he'd be like, "Well, you can't get an A in my class unless you get an A in this class. And then unless you come after school." And then he made me play on a sports team for physical activity. And by the time it was over and I got to high school, like most of the males in my high school class, my middle school classes were beasts. By the time we got to high school, we were like an uncommon breed. And now it's crazy because all of us are in grad school, in professional careers, and back in the city. And some of our friends who weren't engaged are the same place, you know, we kind of left off.
Dr. Ada, I have another question for you, Dr. Adetomiwa, from our chat box. It reads, "Do you ever see faith being used when dealing with Black patients?"
Can you repeat the question?
Do you ever see faith being used when dealing with Black patients?
Absolutely. So just to give an example, just with the scenario today. So there was a family who recently just gave birth to a child, and the baby came out premature. Usually it takes like a full-term pregnancy is about 40 weeks. This baby came out about 25 weeks of age. So one of the first things that the dad said is, as you know, the baby actually wasn't breathing well, so we had to put a tube down his throat. So he, you know, had faith to say, you know, this, you know, "Oh, my child looks great." And I'm pretty sure he's ecstatic, being, you know, having another child to add to the list. So he's happy, you know, he's very excited about what's going on. But shortly afterwards, this baby pretty much starts to have a lot of issues. He's not able to pump enough blood. He's not able to breathe properly on his own. And not to be too graphic, but there is some blood that is also coming out of his mouth as well. And this is a little kid, 25 weeks of age. And it was just a sad situation because the family at the time were still very faithful, still very hopeful that things were going to turn around. So I often do see it a lot in our Black families. And I feel like it is something that is able to at least help us, because oftentimes when people go through a lot of struggle, emotional turmoil, they do feel like they need somebody that's going to be able to listen to them. And God is always there to be able to listen to them. And I've seen such a blessing being able to be there with a patient, be there with families, and pray with them hand in hand through troubling times, because it's able to push them, you know, to where they're supposed to be, to where they need to be.
Thank you. I have another question from the Q&A box for the panel. It reads, "I've learned that humility and being humble has been my son's greatest strength in his decision-making and his attitude. What advice do you have to endorse that mentality in young Black men who are not able to learn that concept from home?"
I think humility, I think since I was younger, that's always been something that I was really big about. I think firstly, I don't think you can really separate. I think it's going to be hard to achieve somebody who's humble if they aren't getting that at home. I'll say that firstly, right? You holding them accountable, right? Saying, hey, like, you know, my grandma used to always say, don't let that go to your head, you know? So, you know, it starts at home. But again, I think it goes back to a lot of things that are out of a parent's control. And it goes to what activities are they involved in, you know, and in those activities, you know, you think about, again, going back to sports, and not to make this about that, but thinking about sports, right? You can perform well and your team can lose, right? So it's not about you, right? So then you think about the fact that, okay, you got to stay humble. You still lost, right? Or you think about performing extremely well, and then you're thinking about still building a team camaraderie. It's like nobody wants to play on a team with individuals who are just full of themselves, right? You make it all about you. So I think sports is one thing, but then just for the average kid, I think we should be, what I think, and just as this is coming from my personal experience, I don't think enough attention is given to kids or students who perform well, who do the normal, natural things well, who go and they get good grades. But you think about, let's just talk about attention and how attention is given. It's the same way that our social media portrays drama, right? If it's a house set on fire, or Wendy's set on fire, whatever it may be, like, we are going crazy. But if you see somebody who starts a business, then like we don't give it a lot of attention, right? So then you think about a student who's inside of school, who's performing well, it's like, hey, good job, keep that up, right? And then you think about the troubled kid, who everybody knows that kid's name. It's kind of like we got all these different systems in place to be able to address it. And so I guess my point is, if you want a student to appreciate the fact that I'm a standout student, we got to reward them for good doing. And they can't just be, you know, get acknowledged when it's something absurd. They can't get acknowledged. They can't be, we can't pour into them so much so to a point where it gets to their head, right? You still want them to be humble. You want them to continue to, you know, pursue more accomplishments. But at the same time, we got to be able to mold kids into greatness. And I think for myself, I remember, I'll tell a quick story. I remember I was in 6th grade and I didn't even realize that I was like a stellar student. And I mean that, I don't mean that to be, you know, naive or make light of the fact that I knew I was smart, right? I wanted to be smart, but I was in a 6th grade class. I was the only kid who had over a 3.0. I had like a 4.0 average, right? I'm in a 6th grade class where I don't think the class was so bad that they took all the females out because the guys were so bad. That's how bad it was. And so nobody else in the class was getting a 3.0. For me, it was cool. I'm like, all right, these my boys. Let me make sure that when I do my homework, I'm passing it. It became a norm because I wasn't getting, it was nobody saying, hey, pulling me to the side, like, listen, you are like standing out. This is amazing. But all I knew is that our class was horrible. It was bad. And so it wasn't until I had a group of teachers pull me out the class one day and they gave me the Harry Potter collection. And they said, listen, this is a book, you know, they talked about what it was. I read every book, I watched every movie, I got to collect to this day, right? I'm an avid fan. My point being, I had individuals who pour into me for well doing, right? We got to have systems in place that reward individuals who are humble, who go along the journey and do as they're supposed to do, because I think it's so many systems in place for individuals who don't do the right thing, right? And they get all the attention. They say squeaky wheel gets the oil. And it's like, we got to have a way to make sure that those other wheels get the oil as well. So that's kind of what I got to say.
In addition to that, Jay Reed said something really profound that stood out to me of, as parents, there's only so much control you have. You're doing everything that you can within your power from birth till 17, 18 years old. And the rest that child has to learn on its own. Mm-hmm. One thing about humility, life has a way of humbling us. So even if they don't get it in the house, they're going to get it. I guarantee it. It's a little thing called karma. So it's going to come. And for those who, you know, for those youth who's on the call, for those who are listening in, one of my mentors taught me this years ago, and I still live by it. And that's understanding that don't allow my lows to be too low and my highs to be too high. It's being balanced and staying in the middle. Because if my high is too high and I fail, then I go all the way to the bottom. If my low is too low and I fail, then I'm below where I was. So finding that balance and never, you know, giving yourself too much credit. Staying humble, you know, understanding I'm putting God first or my higher power first, and then it's me. So if it's me and I'm being human, I'm able to be humble. I'm able to maintain that balance. So that was really key to me, and I still use it to this day.
Now, I think a way to maintain that balance is I think a lot of kids have a false sense of security, or the arrogance is not real, right? It's false arrogance, right? Because you get confidence from working so hard, right? And so I think that's also how you build humility, because when you work so hard and you've been through the struggle and you know how hard it was to get where you are, you're humbled by the fact that you were able to get through all that, right? You don't really, you think highly of yourself, but it's a warranted, reason to there's a reason you think so highly of yourself, right? But you also respect the journey, right? And when you don't respect the journey because you have a lot of false confidence, that takes away the humbleness. There's no humbleness to be there because the confidence isn't even real. So how can you have true humbleness when you don't have the real confidence?
Just to piggyback on that too, and especially on what Jay Reed mentioned earlier, when you have a support system, a family that's able to kind of put you in check, that's key. That's key. There's so many times, I mean, whether it's my parents or my siblings, anytime I may throw in a joke, they're gonna put me in line ASAP. There's no games, nothing playing going on. But on the flip side, and to kind of just, tie it back into the ADHD thing as well, when we kind of have a system where there's parents got to do everything they can to be able to make ends meet. They're working 9 to 5s, working the midnight calls too. They're doing everything to be able to pay for the bills, to be able to, send their kids out to school, have some food. So the attention that kids may have or kids may want from their parents, from the people who they look up to the most, they don't have that opportunity to get it. They may then go about going through other realms to be able to do so. I mean, ADHD is a real thing. It's a real thing. There's a list of several diagnoses that you have to have, and there's 2 checkpoints where you have to go through. Whether you have to be diagnosed by either a teacher and as well as a clinician. So you get diagnosed in 2 different settings. But I'm saying that to say, whether it's overdiagnosis or whatever it is, there is a problem. And that problem not only just stands from maybe having just a label, ADHD, the bad kid, the jokester, the clown of the family, or the clown of the house, but it also speaks back to the barriers that already are placed at home. So parents, if you're on the phone, even the teens that are on the phone too, it's perfectly okay for you to be able to want that that love, that appreciation from somebody that you hold dear to you. Because when you get that, you don't necessarily have to do the most to be able to show that you got your stuff. You don't have to be the class clown. You don't have to go above and beyond in negative ways, just to get something that will make you feel good on the inside. And I feel like, so just to tie that back into the question as well, when family members, when loved ones are able to pour into their kids, and show them that love and appreciation, despite how hectic things may be, that also is kind of like a check and balance as well to help kids, stay humble.
I know we want to be a little conscious of our participants' time, so we're going to get into one more question real quick for the panel, and then we're going to go into some closing remarks. Do any of the panelists have any thoughts about preparing or talking to young men about risk behaviors, sex, substance abuse, etc.?
I'll be quick. First thing is be honest. I feel as though as adults, a lot of times we try to sugarcoat, go around, the scenes. Be honest, be authentic. Your truth, your story, your experience, it matters and it's important. Talk about what you know. Talk about the facts. Talk about, your education, your knowledge about these things that youth can deal with. And to me, it's very important coming from the parent, coming from you than anyone else. So just be honest, be authentic.
I definitely say parents, you gotta beat the world to the punch, because oftentimes our kids are not learning things about sex, things about drugs, things about all that stuff necessarily from the home. I mean, we might chime in here and there. My parents, God bless them, they told me from the jump, you better not get no girl pregnant, point blank period. They told me don't have sex before marriage, all these things. But just tying it back into the youth of today, we have to explain. We can't just tell them, hey, this is the rule, do this or you're not going to be in my house. No, you have to explain things. You got to be a little bit more patient with them. You have to almost have a little bit of faith that that your kids are a little bit, you know, smart enough to be able to see the pros and the cons. Granted, they may still get into trouble. They're young. They're still developing their minds, and so on and so forth. But you being able to be patient with them and tell them, hey, this is what happened. This is my experience, right? A lot of times, you know, as parents, we don't even want to tell our kids, hey, I used to do this, I used to do that. But we just straight out flat tell them no. So you sharing your truth, you being transparent with them, also kind of helps them to navigate the waters as well. And, you know, by God's grace, you know, that's able to take them to where they need to be.
And parents, you got to know what people are saying to your children. You have to actively be engaged because it's just interesting. You cannot put that talk off and let other people have it, or say I'm a mom and I can't have that talk with my son. If you don't, somebody else will, or somebody else really want. And you don't want your kids to learn from pornography, because then that turns into an addiction, and now they treat women bad because they think this is what women actually want, because they're seeing all this positive feedback from these images, not knowing that this is a video with 150 different takes and breaks. That's not how life works. That's not how you were made. That's not what love looks like. That's not what Christians do. But I didn't learn that till like 25, 24. And it was a repetitive cycle of me going through hurting women when I was a boy. I'm like, I didn't deserve none of these young women time. Like they was ready to get after it, get married and do the right thing. And I didn't have that type of foundation set. And then after you realize it, sometimes it could be a little too late. So get to them before somebody else do. That's my advice. And have those painful conversations, even though it might be uncomfortable to you, because they already done heard it.
And then just kind of speaking with when it comes to peds in general, we all know with kids, there's different levels of understanding. Even when it comes to like death, a little kid may say, "Oh, where'd daddy go?" Right? But doesn't have actually, comprehend that dad has actually passed or mom has passed, so on and so forth. So you have to explain it at different stages. So whether that's, at a younger age, letting them know, hey, this is what your baby sister or your new cousin, this is because da-da-da-da-da-da, and the two people who were married, actually did this thing, right? Then when they get a little bit more mature, you can start talking about some of the risks, some of the things that can pretty much be of detriment to them. So that's how you kind of have to address it as well. And that's why I try to stress, you have to be patient when you're having these different conversations, and don't be afraid, to if you don't have the answers for these things, you can always ask people. You can go to a pediatrician. You can go to, a trusted teacher that you've befriended. So many different things and avenues that you can do.
And allow your kids to be tested. So this is the only time I'm gonna speak as a public health practitioner. Allow your kids to be tested. If I talk to one more mom and tell me your son is not having sex and he's like 17, I'm like, if he's not having it, he's thinking about it. Oh, he doesn't need condoms because we mail out condoms for free. PrEP works. Science works. Allow your kids to get tested. Get tested too while you go to the doctor. Just because you sleeping with the same man don't mean you don't need to be tested. These are things that are going on in our community that are sad. Let's break this curse, because once you get on the proper medication, you live your life. Like there's nothing to it, but teach these to your kids while they're young so they can have safer sex, so they can not have these diseases that they live with for the rest of their life. Get them tested, take them to the doctor so they know what regular tests look like, 369, and when you're really active every month, if you got to, while you in undergrad, you have to make that comfortable for them to know that it's normal.
We're gonna move into our closing comments. So this is just gonna be about whatever you want to leave our participants with as it relates to the health of young Black men. Devin, what do you think? What do you got?
Just continue to work at becoming a better person, the way you treat others. And I want to reiterate, think about what you think about. Do not let doubt from others who maybe didn't succeed at what they were doing creep into your mind. Continue to feed positive thoughts to yourself. And I think that will help you in a great deal. And obviously you can there are many other things you can go for. But I think if you start there with positive thoughts and continuing to think about what the things that you're thinking about and to think about the things you're letting in your mind, I think you'll do just fine moving forward to not only making your life better, but making this world a better place.
Awesome. Dr. Jason Branch, what do you think?
Number one, gentlemen, become comfortable being uncomfortable. The only way that we change is our willingness to become comfortable being uncomfortable. So stretch, find ways to be uncomfortable. Put yourself in safe yet uncomfortable situations in order to stretch yourself. To me, once the mind expands, it never goes back to its original form. So it's finding ways to educate yourself, to learn about things that's new and different in order to help enhance your life. Last thing is find a mentor. Anything that you want to do, somebody's doing it. I guarantee they're doing it. If it doesn't exist, then you can create it. But there's a lot of people out there that's doing some of the work, and you don't have to do this by yourself. Find somebody to help you get to where you want to be without having to make so many bumps in the road because they've already made those bumps. Find your mentor. And I don't mind serving as a mentor. Reach out. Any way that I can help you, I'm more than willing to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Jay Reed, what you got?
Again, I just want to also, in case I don't get an opportunity to tell the gentleman, it's been a pleasure being on this panel with you. But if I could leave kids with anything, or the young men that's maybe listening with anything, it would just be, you control your own narrative, right? And this is going back to kind of a question you asked Javante about what do we tell them about, whatever they want to pursue in this lifetime. You can absolutely do that. Regardless of what you see in the news, there will always be things in the news, right? There will always be forces working against you, whether it's internally, whether it's externally, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it's on your job. It's always going to be a reason for you not to be successful. It's always going to be a reason things aren't working. And it's so easy for us to just lay in our mess, right? It's so easy for us to say, it didn't work, I quit. But control your narrative, right? Let your story be one of resilience, right? Again, and I'm sure many of us can attest to having different struggles. Myself, raised by my grandmother and my grandmother only, right? Two parents who were addicts. I'm living downtown Los Angeles. This was my goal, right? And so my point is not to make this about me or the people on this panel, but to make it about our mindsets and the fact that we have goals, we had a narrative that we controlled, and that all of the obstacles along the way, we didn't allow them to get in the way of our ultimate goal. So if you got to go, continue to go for it. And if it's some bumps along the road, just know that's a part of life, and the reward is going to make it all worth it.
Awesome. James, what do you think?
Love prevails. Do work in your community before you try to go abroad, and plan, prepare, research, execute, and if the plan don't go right, redefine and enter that wheel all over again, and you will be successful through the experience you have. Like, just believe in yourself.
Awesome. Dr. Adetomiwa.
Definitely, I would say find a mentor, like these great young men have mentioned. Find somebody who's equally invested in you as yourself, if not even more. Someone that can be a soundboard to you, somebody who you can vent to, someone who you can talk to. And a lot of times with our communities, I know, it may just be the mom. And even though mom may be annoying and she might be nagging and getting, in your behind, that's someone that's going to have your best interest at the end of the day. So develop that relationship, build on that relationship. And as you build a strong foundation for yourself, as you build security in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, through faith, through your work ethic, through love, through smarts and emotions, you're able to move to the next level. You're able to excel in things. So find a mentor, find somebody who wants to help you out in this journey. And like everyone has said here, we are all willing to reach back. We're all not even reach back, reach to our side, because you're not behind us. You're with us. You're with us. So God bless you guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank y'all so much.
Appreciate it. And for me, I think I think my advice would be fairly simple, and I think that is just telling young Black men that they matter, telling young Black men that their voices matter, that their dreams matter. Because I think due to systemic racism, and there's this analogy about a frog in a well, And when a frog is in a well, it only knows what's in the well. It can look up and see, that there's another world outside of the well, but it seems a little tough to get there. And I think that's what a lot of systemic oppression has done to a lot of young Black men. So being able to encourage, tell them that they matter, tell young Black men, whether it's a peer, whether it's your son, whether it's your son's friend, anything, tell them that they matter and that they can achieve those dreams regardless of how tough that they might be, that they'll be able to overcome. I think that's going to be able to go a long way because we're not all young Black men have that mom or their dads or their parent figure in their life. So being able to hear that from anybody could go a very, very, very long way. So yeah, that's what I have. Looks like that's pretty much it. So.
Okay. I'm going to say a few closing comments. Thank you so much, Javante. This was so wonderful. I know we probably could go on and on. I'm just so happy right now. I did want to say thank you to each and every one of you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. Thank you to all the panelists. They requested a Young Men's Health Matters version, for young men only. So thank you for all of your comments. They were just amazing. So please feel free to provide us with any feedback or additional questions you may have, and fill out the survey provided in your confirmation email, which we will be sending. Also, it's been dropped in the chat box. All of their social media tags, information has been also dropped in the chat box. Again, thank you to all panelists for sharing your expertise, information, and experiences. We would like to thank one more time Detroit Community Health Connection, the University of Michigan School of Nursing, the DRB Lab, the Curtis Center at the University of Michigan School of Social Work, and to all of the participants that attended this evening. You can follow us on Twitter, which is in addition to those the information that was listed for the panelists, at BMO Project, which means Black Male Opinions On. So this is your opinion. These opinions count. All this information is just relevant. So, and at Project BMO on Instagram as well, and Facebook. So I am done, and thank you. This is on Facebook Live. I will be putting this on YouTube, and again, complete the survey because these conversations are real, but until we start publishing it in the papers, in research and literature, so that people can know the positive things that young Black men are doing, that's the type of narrative that needs to be out there right now. So thank you again, and have a wonderful evening. Panelists, stay on for 1 second. Thank you.